Hello, my dear children. Today we have gathered here with our English lesson, Form 4, Writing Skills. SOW reference, pages 24 to 33 in your textbook, English Language A, Edexcel International GCSE 9-1. Before getting on with the lesson, I will ask you a few questions. Will it be interesting if the content of the story that you read is not interesting? For me, of course, no. To make it interesting, what should we do? What we should include in the story that we write? If it is not interesting, what will we do? We will probably leave it out. We will not even read the first half of the story. So yes, I'm here today for you to enhance your writing skills, to make sure that your writing is interesting, to make sure that what you write is accurate to the content that you are hoping to give out to the reader. Yes, so first of all, what we need to do is we need to choose the right vocabulary. So it is a relevant fact that the piece of writing that you write need to be attractive and accurate to what you are trying to imply. So whatever the content that you want to give out to the reader, it should be accurate and also attractive, as I said in the beginning. And also, to draw the attention of the reader, your writing should grow interest in the reader. So in order to take the attention, especially, you can start it up with the heading itself. So to make it interesting, you can do the given instructions. To make your writing interesting, use words that engage the senses in your opening sentences. So if you include some interesting sentences which includes the senses in it, I know for sure it will be an interesting piece of writing, plus the readers will have the urge to read on and on what's going on. It exploded in her face. So you imagine starting a story with this sentence, alright, with a visual imagery. For sure, the reader will start reading what happened next. What exploded? How did it happen? On whose face did it explode? Yes. Something was scratching under the door. So the reader will be very curious to know what will be scratching under the door. So with this auditory imagery, with a sound effect, the writer has dragged the attention of the reader in a very successful manner. From the kitchen came a reminder of the garlic she loved. So with this olfactory imagery, what happened? Even we got a hunger in us. Even now, I can feel an alarm inside my tummy at the moment. Alright, so he pulled a face as if he had swallowed sour milk. The wind brushed his skin. So likewise, by using the senses into your piece of writing, in the beginning of your writing, it will be for sure interesting for the reader. Okay, so let's first check out this activity number 1, engaging your senses. So there will be 2 sentences. I need you all to have a quick look at it and just tell me what sentence is more clearer to you. For an example, have a look at the slide that I have given you. Some sort of animal could be seen approaching along the side of the road. Alright, some sort of animal could be seen approaching along the side of the road. A cat could be seen walking cautiously along the gutter. So what is the most clear writing to you? What is the most clear writing? Yes, so it's up to you. Sometimes you might find the first one more clear, sometimes you might find the second one more clear. But in general, I think the second sentence will be clearer than the first. We know for sure the some sort of animal that they are referring to is a cat. And then where is it approaching? It's walking cautiously along the gutter. So no doubt we know it's a cat who is walking on a gutter. Alright, so the second sentence is very clear. So let's have a discussion on this. On your page number 26, in the precision part, when you write or speak, your choice of words can be very important, especially when you write. When you speak, the person who is listening can ask you to explain yourself if anything you say is not clear. Alright, so here the main aim that I need y'all to follow is to make your writing more clear. That means don't make the reader boring by making it not clear. So at the very first hand, give out the fact and then make it clear. But at the same moment, there are readers who would like to have some curiosity in themselves and make it more interesting to themselves. At the same moment, things can happen like this. So however, when you write, your reader will probably not be able to ask for an explanation, so you have to get things right first time. So the main thing that your textbook is trying to imply is whatever the writing that you write, make it clear. Alright, yes. Moving on to the next activity, activity number 2, precision in action. So what's the picture that you can see here? It's the Titanic. Yes, it is the Titanic. So when it wrecked, how might the passengers might have felt, and those who were living in the lifeboat, how might have they felt? Okay, so here we are going to discuss some points on that and to get along with the activity that the textbook has provided you. Alright, so let's move on to the content of the passage that they have given us. So this extract is from an account of the sinking of the Titanic. The Titanic had been described as unsinkable, and so its sinking caused widespread shock in 1912. So you have to read the following extract carefully, noticing the choice of language used to convey the witness's shock and the horror. And then you have to copy and complete the table in page number 27, selecting keywords and phrases that the writer uses to convey what they can see. Alright, so here what they are trying to imply in this passage is the horror that the passengers went through and how a witness expresses his shock and terror. So from this we are going to find through which phrases, through which keywords that the writer is showing that this was a terrific moment, that this was a shocking moment. Alright, so you have to find out those relevant words and fill the table in here. So to move on with the activity, one example is provided for you, so you can follow that example and do the rest. So you can discuss among y'all what are the phrases. So first of all, you have to read the passage, underline the phrases or the keywords, and then you have to find what that particular phrase or the word conveys. So this word which is here, what's the word that I have provided y'all? It's fearful. So this word conveys the pitiful state of the panicking passengers who were still on the ship. Okay, so you can see, and you can find more phrases and keywords from this, and then you have to mention what it conveys. So overall, the fear is being implied through all these words. So it's okay that your answer on the implications are the same, but make sure that you find different keywords or phrases. Vocabulary for effect. What do you mean by this? When I said vocabulary for effect, what do we mean by this? Okay, let me ask you a question. If the particular writing has interesting vocabulary and has interesting vocabulary which turns the plot upside down, what will you feel? Will you feel like leaving that story, or else will you feel like hanging on to the story and moving on with the rest of the story? Well, of course, if I have good language in it, good vocabulary in it, I would recommend and I would for sure finish reading the whole book or maybe an article then and there itself. So, why do we have connotations? Let's see why we are using the connotations. First of all, let me get this straight. What are connotations? A feeling or idea that is suggested by a particular word, although it need to be a part of the word's meaning, or something suggested by an object or situation. Or else from another word, if you say a feeling or idea that is suggested by a word in addition to its basic meaning, or something suggested by an object or situation. For an example, resolute means stubborn, but with a more positive connotation. So likewise, we can use connotations in order to imply meanings in a different manner. Language for different effects. In order to make more effective the writing of yours, we can use literary devices as well. What do you mean by these literary devices? Let's have a look at some so that you can get an idea about it. Alright, moving on with the first literary device. I will first ask you a question by giving you an example so that you can have an idea about the first literary device that I will be going to discuss with you. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Wait a minute. Can we eat a horse? Stop imagining eat the horse, even though you are able to, but it's impossible. How can you eat a horse? So I am so hungry I could eat a horse. So it's impossible for you to eat a horse, and it will be very absurd as well. So did someone, whoever the person who told this sentence, did they mean it? What do you think? Did that person really meant that he can eat a horse right now? I don't think so. So to have a further clarification, let's have a look at this. The speaker will not literally eat an entire horse, obviously, and most likely couldn't. But this hyperbole emphasizes how starved the speaker feels. So we know how much this speaker was hungry. He was starving. It's not hungry, but he was starving. So that he told that he could eat a horse. That much he was hungry. So we call this type of writing, we call this type of emphasizing as hyperbole. You call it hyperbole. Hyperbole is an exaggerated statement that's not meant to be taken literally. Okay, so that's the point that you should take. If a speaker speaks a sentence with extra exaggeration, well, of course, you call it a hyperbole. So you don't take it literally by the reader. So it's often used for comedic effect and or emphasis. Alright, yes. I hope that you understood that literary device. And it will be more interesting if you use such literary devices in your writing so that it will be way more interesting and it will boost up the curiosity of the reader as well. Moving on to the next literary device, a simile. Well, this is a literary device that we've been hearing from our smaller grades, primary 5, form 1, and up to now we are hearing this literary device, and you will be hearing it in future as well. Anyway, what do you mean by a simile? What do you mean by a simile? So while I ask the question, you're supposed to have an idea about what a simile is. Alright, so simile, as soon as someone asks you what a simile is, you have to give the answer. It's about a comparison. If you are comparing two things, then you call it a simile. But that can be a metaphor as well. So how do we clarify a simile and a metaphor? We clarify a simile by noticing the words as or like in the sentence. So if two things are compared by using the words as or like, of course that's a simile. So it's a type of a metaphor. You can take it as that, but don't mix it up. So she is as vicious as a lion. Since this statement uses the word as to make a comparison between she and a lion. Let's move on to the next literary device, repetition. Repetition, with the word itself, we know what kind of literary device is that. We know for sure that we are considering about some kind of a phrase or a word being repeated in a piece of writing. So repetition is when a word or phrase is written multiple times, usually for the purpose of emphasis. So if you want to emphasize something effectively, interestingly, or more thoroughly, you can use repetition. And to take the interest, to drag the attention of the reader, you can use repetition as well. So often you can use this in poetry for purposes of rhythm as well. So here is an incident where this repetition was used. So we'll see how it will go. When Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote the score for the hit musical Hamilton, gave his speech at the 2016 Tonys, he recited a poem he'd written that included the following line. Just imagine that you are reading this sentence in front of an audience in your school. What will your audience feel and how will they react? Now I will be reading it for you. At the same time, you can repeat it with me. And love is love is love. Is love is love. Is love is love cannot be killed or swept aside. So probably your audience might have a feeling that you got stuck in middle. So what happened there? You took the attention of the whole audience or maybe your reader, isn't it? So this is a very effective and a very strong way of creating interest in the reader. If you like, you can reread it. Yes. So moving on to the next literary device, it's personification. That means we are giving life to a non-living thing, if I say it in an easy manner. It is when a non-human figure or other abstract concept or element is described as having human-like qualities or characteristics. So as I said, giving life, giving an action that a human does to a non-living object. For an example, the daffodils danced in the yard. So if you tell like that, what will you feel? You will for sure have an imagination that a daffodil is dancing with its hands and legs. So that's what you call personification. So even when I tell that, you are interested, isn't it? You were interested, you might have got interested on a dancing daffodil, isn't it? So giving life or as giving a human action to a non-living thing, you call it a personification. Unlike anthropomorphism, where non-human figures become human-like characters, with personification, the object or the figure is simply described as being human-like. Alright, so it's like an additional fact for you. The personification is used to help the reader create a clearer mental picture of the scene or object being described. So it's quite illusionary, but still the writer will try to give the real effect, the real scenario that he sees, the real scenario that he might have heard, and he's trying to imply it to us. Yeah, so you will get in a very interesting manner if a particular incident is being said with the usage of the literary device personification. For an example, the wind moaned. Mourning is being done by human. It's not done by these winds or anything else. Right? So I'm beckoning me to come outside. In this example, the wind, a non-human element. So what's the non-human element here? The wind. So is wind described as if it's human? It moans and beckons. Alright, so as you can see, what I said, I think it might be clear for you that personification means that you are giving a human-like quality to a non-human figure. Okay, let's move on to the next part of our lesson. Rhetorical question is another literary device. What do you mean by a rhetorical question? Normally, in these dramas, or maybe in novels, or maybe in poems, short stories, you can find rhetorical questions. What do you mean by this? When you are reading a book, there is a question, but the answer is not there at that moment, but you know the answer. But can you tell the answer to the book? No, right? So whatever the question is being asked, but you don't have an answer for that. Though you have an answer, sometimes you might not be able to give an answer. So you call it a rhetorical question. So a rhetorical question is asked just for effect or to lay emphasis on some point being discussed when no real answer is expected. But for real, is an answer expected? No. When you ask a rhetorical question, an answer is not expected. It is because to give an emphasis to the reader or maybe the incident which is occurring at that moment. Okay, so a rhetorical question may have an obvious answer, but the questioner asks it to lay emphasis to the point. So in literature, a rhetorical question is self-evident and used for style as an impressive, persuasive device. Furthermore, rhetorical questions, though almost needless or meaningless, seem a basic need of daily language. Some common examples of rhetorical language from daily life are as follows. So now you are having a conversation with one of your friends, and then your friend is asking, I really don't know what made me do that. Alright, and your friend replies, who knows? Isn't it? So you are asking a question from your friend, the question replies, get a reply from your friend, who knows? Are you stupid? Did you hear me? Okay, why not? Alright, so giving an answer to a question by another question leave you there with a rhetorical question. Alright, so it is also a very interesting and an effective manner when you are writing a short story or maybe any other poetry. Contrast. What do you mean by contrast? Contrast is a rhetorical device through which writers identify differences between two subjects, places, persons, things, or ideas. Simply, it is a type of opposition between two objects highlighted to emphasize their differences. Now, there are several types of contrast so that you will be understanding it in a better manner. Point by point contrast is the first type of contrast that we are going to discuss. So in this type of contrast, writers deal with a series of features or two subjects and then present their contrast, discussing all points successively. Subject by subject contrast. In this type of contrast, a writer first discusses one subject thoroughly and then moves on to another. Examples of contrast in literature. Eminent men I have known, unpopular essays by Bertrand Russell. To begin with the differences, Lenin was cruel, which Gladstone was not. Lenin had no respect for tradition, whereas Gladstone had a great deal. Lenin considered all means legitimate for securing the victory of his party, whereas for Gladstone politics was a game with certain rules that must be observed. All these differences, to my mind, are to the advantage of Gladstone, and accordingly Gladstone on the whole had beneficent effects, while Lenin's effects were disastrous. Okay, so through this contrast, what happened? The two things are being contrasted in the same paragraph. Two people's attitudes are compared in this paragraph so that we can come up with a conclusion. Direct address. In English grammar and rhetoric, direct address is a construction in which a speaker or writer communicates a message directly to another individual or group of individuals. The person being addressed may be identified by name, their nickname, the pronoun you, or an expression that either friendly or unfriendly. Conventionally, the name of the person or group being addressed is set off by a comma or a pair of commas. So likewise, there are examples given for you for direct address. I will read one for you. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Mark Antony in Julius Caesar, Act 3, Scene 2 by William Shakespeare. Okay, so as you can see, direct address is being given where we know what the exact plot is going on in the drama or maybe the novel. Why your choices matter? We'll see. Style, in its broadest sense, is a specific way in which we create, perform, or do something. Style in literature is a way an author uses words to tell a story. It is a writer's way of showing his or her personality on paper. So, what are the choices that affect a writer's style? It can be the word choice, punctuation, sentence structure, the tone, the sensory details, figurative language such as metaphors and similes as we discussed in the literary devices, and sound devices such as alliteration and onomatopoeia. So likewise, the writer can have his own choice to make the writing more interesting. For an example, the word choice is his. He doesn't want to stick into one choice of word. For an example, it can be archaic language, the way he writes the words, or it can be modern English. Okay, and usage of punctuations and the sentence structures and the tone of writing, if everything is based on the choice of the writer. So this is why your choices matter. So today we learned how we use vocabulary in an effective manner and why we do that and why our choices matter at the end when we write our own piece of writing. So that's it for today about using your vocabulary in an effective and an interesting manner. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.